You won't believe what happened the other day in my quiet neighborhood, something that shook me to my core and showed me just how quickly people can jump to judgment. It all started when my disabled son suddenly needed urgent medical help. I called 911, expecting the ambulance to rush right in. But then, out of nowhere, this HOA Karen stepped in and literally blocked the ambulance from reaching my driveway. Can you imagine? Someone standing in the way of emergency medical care, right at the moment when every second counts. At first, I was stunned and angry, thinking this was just a nightmare. But what happened next changed everything. Now, this isn't just about a difficult neighbor or a simple misunderstanding. There's more beneath the surface, and it involves who I really am, a 3-star general. That part surprised her more than anything, but it also made me realize how little some people know about what it takes to serve and protect. This story isn't just about conflict or confrontation. It's about respect, assumptions, and what happens when people don't see beyond their own narrow views. But did the ambulance get through? What did she say when she found out who I was? And how did this whole situation end? Stick around, because you won't want to miss what happened next. So let me back up a little and explain how things got to that point. We live in a small, peaceful community with strict HOA rules designed to keep everything orderly and quiet. For the most part, neighbors get along, but there's always that one person who takes rules a little too seriously. Enter Karen. She's the type who loves to enforce every little regulation, from parking spots to lawn decorations, and she's not shy about making sure everyone knows it. Honestly, I had a few run-ins with her before, but nothing like this. My son's disability means we sometimes need quick access for medical help. On that day, he was struggling to breathe, and I was frantic trying to get the ambulance in as fast as possible. When Karen stepped in and parked her car across the street, blocking the way, it felt like time stopped. I tried explaining the emergency, but she wasn't having it. She said something about community rules and not blocking the street, acting like this was just a routine inconvenience, not a life or death situation. What she didn't know was who she was dealing with. Being a 3-star general means I've faced pressure and crises far worse than this, but nothing prepared me for how personal this fight would become. The tension was thick, and I could tell this was about to turn into a battle neither of us expected. But before I could do anything, something happened that caught both of us completely off guard. Just when I thought things couldn't get any more tense, Karen's phone rang. I overheard her talking loudly, telling someone about the military guy blocking the street and how she wasn't backing down. It hit me. This wasn't just about the ambulance or the HOA rules anymore. It was turning into a full-blown neighborhood showdown, and Karen was rallying support, probably to paint me as the problem. I could see the fear in my son's eyes, and all I wanted was to get him the help he needed without making things worse. From my side, it was about more than just authority or rank. It was about protecting my family, standing up for what's right, and breaking through the misunderstandings that seem to pile up when people only see what they want to see. Karen saw me as some sort of enemy, someone disrupting her idea of order, but she didn't realize how fragile the situation was or how much was at stake. At the same time, I wondered if she had any idea what it feels like to live with constant worry about your child's health, or what kind of strength it takes to keep calm when every second counts. Meanwhile, other neighbors started to gather, whispering, watching. Some looked sympathetic, others clearly sided with Karen. The community that once felt like a safe place was suddenly divided, and the rules everyone followed seemed less important than what was unfolding right in front of us. The ambulance was still stuck behind that car, and I kept thinking, how far will this go? What will happen if the tension keeps rising? The night was far from over, and this battle was just getting started. The crowd around us was growing, and the tension was thick enough to cut with a knife. Karen was standing her ground, arms crossed, refusing to move her car, as if she was daring anyone to challenge her. I could hear murmurs from neighbors, some urging her to let the ambulance through, others quietly taking her side. The air felt heavy with frustration and confusion, and every second felt like an eternity. My son was getting worse, and I kept glancing at him, trying to stay calm even though panic was bubbling just beneath the surface. I stepped forward, trying once again to explain the urgency, but Karen just shook her head. Then, someone nearby shouted about the military general, making it clear word had spread about who I was. I could feel eyes on me, some filled with curiosity, others with skepticism. I realized this wasn't just about one blocked ambulance anymore. It was about respect, authority, and pride on both sides. I wanted to de-escalate, to get this resolved without a scene, but Karen seemed determined to make this about power, not compassion. Just when I thought it couldn't get any worse, the sound of sirens grew louder, and the ambulance was now stuck, unable to move because of Karen's car. My heart pounded. Everyone was waiting to see what I'd do next, what Karen's next move would be. The whole neighborhood was holding its breath, caught in this standoff that felt like it could explode at any moment. I knew whatever happened next would change everything for my family, for Karen, and for everyone watching. Just when I thought the situation had reached its peak, something unexpected happened. A neighbor I barely knew stepped forward and confronted Karen. His voice was calm but firm, as he reminded her that this wasn't just about HOA rules anymore. It was a matter of life and death. But instead of backing down, Karen dug in even deeper, accusing me of using my military rank to intimidate the community. The accusation hit me like a punch I didn't see coming. Suddenly, this wasn't just a standoff about an ambulance. It was turning personal in ways I hadn't anticipated. Then, out of nowhere, Karen pulled out her phone and started live-streaming the whole thing. The tension shifted instantly. Now the entire neighborhood, and maybe even more, were watching this showdown play out in real time. Comments started flooding in, some supporting Karen's defense of HOA rules, others demanding the ambulance get through immediately. The pressure was unbearable. My son's health was hanging by a thread, and every second felt like it was slipping away. To make things worse, the ambulance crew finally arrived at the blocked street but couldn't get through. They started calling for backup and trying to communicate with dispatch, but the delay was already critical. I realized this confrontation was about to spiral far beyond anything I ever imagined when the unexpected happened. A familiar voice called out from behind me, and suddenly everything changed. What happened next turned this entire conflict upside down, and you won't believe who stepped in to shift the balance. As the tension hit its breaking point, that familiar voice behind me cut through the chaos. It was the HOA president, the very person who usually stayed quiet during these disputes. She stepped forward, her tone serious but calm, and said, "Karen, this has gone far enough. You're blocking emergency services, and that's not something we can tolerate." Karen's face paled for the first time, and the live stream paused as everyone turned their attention to this unexpected intervention. Without wasting another second, the HOA president instructed Karen to move her car immediately. Reluctantly, Karen obeyed, and the ambulance was finally able to pull through. The paramedics rushed to my son's side, and I breathed a shaky sigh of relief. It wasn't just about rules anymore. It was about compassion and humanity, and in that moment, the community's priorities shifted. But just when I thought the ordeal was over, the HOA president looked at me and said quietly, "I didn't just come here to stop Karen. I wanted to tell you something. You're not the only one with a military background in this neighborhood." Everyone froze. Out of the crowd stepped another neighbor, someone I hadn't expected, a decorated veteran who had quietly served alongside me years ago. Suddenly, what began as a fight over an ambulance had turned into a reunion none of us saw coming. This neighborhood was more connected than anyone realized, and the real story was only just beginning. With the ambulance finally at my son's side, relief washed over me like a tidal wave. The paramedics quickly got to work, and I could see the tension in everyone's faces start to ease. Karen, who had been so fierce just moments before, now looked uncertain, like she was beginning to understand the gravity of what had happened. The HOA president's words had reminded us all that some rules just can't come before basic human kindness, especially when someone's life is at stake. The unexpected arrival of my fellow veteran neighbor added a new layer to the story. It reminded me that behind every face in this community, there are stories of service, sacrifice, and strength that often go unnoticed. This whole ordeal showed how easily misunderstandings can escalate and divide people, but also how those same people can come together when it matters most. As my son was safely taken to the hospital, I looked around at the neighbors, some still quietly processing everything. I realized this experience was more than just a dramatic confrontation. It was a wake-up call about empathy, respect, and the importance of looking beyond surface conflicts. In the end, this story isn't just about an ambulance blocked by an HOA dispute. It's about the power of community when we choose to see each other as humans first. She stepped forward, her tone serious but calm, and said, "Karen, this has gone far enough. You're blocking emergency services, and that's not something we can tolerate." Karen's face paled for the first time, and the live stream paused as everyone turned their attention to this unexpected intervention. Without wasting another second, the HOA president instructed Karen to move her car immediately. Reluctantly, Karen obeyed, and the ambulance was finally able to pull through. The paramedics rushed to my son's side, and I breathed a shaky sigh of relief. It wasn't just about rules anymore, it was about compassion and humanity, and in that moment, the community's priorities shifted. But just when I thought the ordeal was over, the HOA president looked at me and said quietly, "I didn't just come here to stop Karen. I wanted to tell you something. You're not the only one with a military background in this neighborhood." Everyone froze. Out of the crowd stepped another neighbor, someone I hadn't expected, a decorated veteran who had quietly served alongside me years ago. As my son was safely taken to the hospital, I looked around at the neighbors, some still quietly processing everything. I realized this experience was more than just a dramatic confrontation. It was a wake-up call about empathy, respect, and the importance of looking beyond surface conflicts. In the end, this story isn't just about an ambulance blocked by an HOA dispute. It's about the power of community when we choose to see each other as humans first.